is Shane, and this is a brief history of the Paul Bunyan Muffler Man. A muffler man is a giant fiberglass statue made from a series of standard molds about 18 to 25 feet tall, often seen scattered around and in front of businesses in North America. They have several different molds, ranging from a cowboy to Alfred E. Newman, but my favorite one, and the topic of this presentation, is the Paul Bunyan variant. The Paul Bunyan statue was actually the first muffler man ever sculpted by Bob Prewitt, whose company was actually known for making large fiberglass animals. As the legend goes, the person that ordered Paul Bunyan didn't pay for the statue, so Bob Prewitt put the whole 22-foot statue on a trailer and hit the road, looking for someone to buy it. The more likely story, however, is that the former Paul Bunyan Cafe in Flagstaff, Arizona, just ordered one, and then Bob Prewitt built it, and then they received it in a perfectly ordinary and uneventful business transaction. This is also the reason why most muffler men have their arms in this position, which is the position that Paul Bunyan held his axe in. After a year or so, Prewitt's company was bought, and the new company, International Fiberglass, used his molds to make a series of giant men, which is what they were called at the time. They didn't start being called muffler men until Roadside America started calling them that because they saw a lot of them carrying mufflers. Thousands were made as they were fairly cheap to produce and purchase at about $1,000 to $3,000 each, and became an appealing and common roadside attraction. Now, there's a bit over 100 of them left. The Paul Bunyan statue is distinct from the others for the following features. His knit cap, his beard, and his pants are tucked into his boots instead of being respectably cuffed right around his ankles. 3 of my favorite muffler men are in Illinois, and one is the Mutant, which is a heavily modified muffler man. The Bunyan Giant is actually a bit of a crossbreed. He has a standard model face with no beard or knit cap, but his pants are the Paul Bunyan model's pants. He's actually called the Bunyan Giant because he used to stand in front of a restaurant called Bunyan's Hot Dogs. But since he's also known as Tall Paul, I believe that it's reasonable to call him a Bunyan Muffler Man. The Gemini Giant is not a Paul Bunyan Muffler Man at all, but he is very cool. The Lauterbach Giant actually is a Paul Bunyan Muffler Man, and he's named a Lauterbach Man because he stands in front of, well, Lauterbach Tire and Auto Service. He was decapitated during a tornado, but he got better. This is Chicken Boy. He's a mutant muffler man and not a Paul Bunyan muffler man at all, but I really like him. Let me explain a little bit why I'm really into these statues. In 2015 or so, I had a bet with a friend to see which one of us could take more selfies with Paul Bunyan statues in a 2-year period. Our rules were that the statue had to be clearly a larger-than-life giant lumberjack, and that I wasn't allowed to build my own statue. Because I'm very organized and enjoy wrangling data, this is a screenshot of my custom Google map that plots out every Paul Bunyan statue, not all of which are muffler men, in the continental United States and 2 in Canada. Spoiler, I did not actually win this bet. I visited about 28 statues and he got to about 33 different ones, and we overlapped on only 4. My statues included statues in California, New Mexico, Arizona, New York, Oregon, Illinois, and more. I'm sorry, I'm actually do want to show you some of these selfies, so you're going to have to look at them. This muffler man in Flagstaff, Arizona is in front of the stadium in Northern Arizona University, and we're pretty sure that it's the one that used to stand in front of Paul Bunyan's cafe, which makes it the first one ever made. It is painted in the colors of NAU's football team, who are called the Lumberjacks, of course. There's another one in the stadium, and that's basically the story of how I broke into a football stadium to take a picture of a fiberglass statue. The one next to it is in upstate New York. There are actually quite a few there, but this one is at an old Boy Scout camp. The one in Albuquerque, don't worry about him. He's armless. Get it? He doesn't have any arms. Anyway. He's actually a heavily modified muffler man. He has a new head. We're not actually sure how much of him is still a muffler man. I had to climb up on my cargo van to take that picture because the statue's on a roof. My van is named Babe the Blue Van, in case you're wondering how devoted I am to this Paul Bunyan shtick. One of the highlights of my life was when I got to bring my tiny adventure dog Bug to visit her first Paul Bunyan Muffler Man. This is at a garden center in Illinois, and she was thoroughly unimpressed. The Paul Bunyan statue in Portland, Oregon is not a muffler man, but it is the site of one of my greatest triumphs. So what happened is that I was off-grid in Canada for about a week without internet access, and my friend had decided to take the time to drive from Sacramento to Portland, picking up about 8 or 9 statues on the way. With every statue he visited, he tagged me in a very gloating Facebook post, which is what we did to goad each other on, which we did somewhat impolitely. So I got off of Vancouver Ferry and had a pile of notifications that was basically him just upping his personal Bunyan count and making fun of me for falling behind. So there was only one thing I could do, which is that I drove from Vancouver, Canada, to Portland in order to get to the statue 45 minutes before my friend did. Here's a list of things that Paul Bunyan Muffler Man have been seen holding. Axes, which seems very reasonable, a bowling ball, a 5-gallon bucket, a giant hot dog, tires, such as the Lauterbach man actually used to hold one before he got a more patriotic flag, and a flag, which leads me to my favorite Paul Bunyan Muffler Man story. In the 1970s, a door store in Connecticut put up a Paul Bunyan Muffler Man in front of their business. Now, Cheshire, Connecticut is one of those cute small towns that's pretty picky about remaining cute. So they had a city law that said signs couldn't be higher than 7 feet. Paul Bunyan here was at least 15 feet taller than that. However, there were no limits on the heights of flagpoles. So the owners plopped an American flag in his hand, and he still stands proudly and patriotically today. Thank you very much for listening to me talk about fiberglass statues for 5 minutes. Bless your patient hearts.